I'll therefore focus on 5 issues, namely, just concluded SADC summit held in Swaziland. 2, the outcomes of the G20 Leaders Summit meeting held in Hangzhou, China. 3, the forthcoming Non-Alignment Movement Summit in Venezuela. 4, the upcoming 71st session of the General Assembly to be held in New York in the next coming week. And lastly, a word or two on the recent earthquake in Tanzania. Ladies and gentlemen, we of the media, we've just recently participated in the 36th Ordinary Summit of Heads of States of SADC in Mbabane, Swaziland, or in the Kingdom of Swaziland, from the 30th to the 31st August 2016, led by our President. The summit's theme was resources mobilization for investment in sustainable energy infrastructure for an inclusive SADC industrialization for the and prosperity of the region. You'd recall that a year or so ago we had a special summit, extraordinary summit that focused on SADC industrialization. This was held in Zimbabwe prior to the ordinary summit in Botswana that followed. So if you look at our themes, they weave the thread as to that was about industrialization. And so we are beginning to unpack how we would attain these goals with this SADC summit, the 36th Ordinary Summit. Amongst other matters, then, other than focusing on the how we have to become self-reliant on resuscitating economies in our region, the summit also looked at issues of peace and security in the region. The summit first elected our president in South Africa as the incoming chair of SADC for year 2017-2018. Next, the new president of Tanzania, or United Republic of Tanzania, President John Magufuli, and President Jose dos Santos of the Republic of Angola were elected as chair and incoming chair of the organ on politics, defense, and security cooperation, respectively. On the political situation in the region, the chair on the organ, then outgoing, President Filipe Nyusi, presented a report on the political and security developments in the region. Within this context, he gave an opportunity also to our Deputy President to update the leaders on the progress we are making in Lesotho. So, Deputy President Ramaphosa presented his report and also shared the challenges in the process, which includes constitutional, public and security sector reforms. These are the undertakings that the new government in Lesotho had committed themselves to, that if we were to find sustainable peace in Lesotho, they have to have these reforms. On the Democratic Republic of Congo, the summit noted that the process to update the voters' registration in the DRC has commenced. The summit further commended the government of the DRC and MONUSCO for signing the technical arrangement on the 28th of January 2016, thereby paving the way for the effective resumption of joint operations between MONUSCO forces and the National Defense Forces of the DRC or FARDC against negative forces such as the FDLR, ADF, and Lord Resistance Army or LRA, and other armed groups. The summit in Mbabane urged the DRC stakeholders to participate in the national inclusive dialogue and to agree on a roadmap leading to the democratic elections, and expressed its support to the national inclusive dialogue facilitated by Mr. Kujo as the special envoy of the African Union. You would recall that he was amongst the first leaders to accent the position of the then Secretary General of the OAU. On the Kingdom of Lesotho, as I said earlier on, after receiving the report of the facilitator in the name of our Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, the summit urged the Kingdom of Lesotho to ensure all-inclusive process for the constitutional public, which would include the public sector, the NGOs in their different forms, and opposition leaders and academia into the same constitutional reforms and security sector reforms discussions, debates, or dialogue. The summit further urged the Kingdom of Lesotho to continue and expedite the implementation of the decisions of the double troika of the 18th January and 28th June 2016, respectively. Lastly, the summit noted that Botswana resubmitted the candidate that was supported by SADC in the name of the Honorable Dr. Pelonomi Venson Muitoi, who is the Foreign Minister of Botswana, as the candidate for African Union Commission Chairperson in the next elections in January in Addis Ababa at the AU Summit. Now, on our participation or South Africa's participation at the G20 Summit, which took place from the 4th to the 5th of September 2016, President Zuma led a delegation of ministers, which included myself, to the G20 Leaders Summit in Hangzhou from the 4th to the 5th of September. South Africa's participation in the G20 is guided by our own national interests and the primacy of the African Agenda 2063. Central to South Africa's national agenda is Outcome 11, which basically focuses on creating a better South Africa and contributing to a better and safer Africa and a better world. The summit this year was under the theme towards an inclusive, invigorated, interconnected, and inclusive world economy. You'd see that this would have augured very well for us as a country, but also because we always try and include African countries' agenda in the G20. And we also brief regularly the would-be current or the chair of the AU summit at that time, with this, in this instance here, it was the president of Chad and the head of HISCOC, the committee of NEPAD heads of states, in the name of President Macky Sall of Senegal. The G20 leaders discussed specific priority areas under this theme. 1, breaking a new path for growth in a global stagnation that we all are busy confirming. Global trade and investment or economic climate. 2, more effective and efficient global economic and financial governance. 3, robust international trade and investment. 4, inclusive and interconnected development. And 5, other issues affecting the world, such as the antimicrobial resistance, or AMR. Under the Chinese presidency, the outcome of the summit, which has been, if you like, ambitious but equally substantive in addressing the challenges, was a welcome development for us. We are also pleased that the B20, or Business 20, had invited our president, President Zuma, to participate as one of the panelists, and that the theme complemented the main theme of the G20. The theme of the B20 complemented that of the G20. The recommendations of the B20, therefore, contributed positively to the summit, and we believe will further contribute to realizing our objective of achieving an innovative, invigorated, interconnected, and inclusive world. On inclusive growth, we welcome the focused attention that developing countries received at the G20 summit. Half the time, focuses on issues raised by developed countries, but this time around, we think there was equal, if not more, attention to issues that affect global economy, but also the world. On key outcomes of the summit, as far as South Africa and Africa is concerned, one is a commitment to multilateralism and the Doha development agenda. South Africa called on the strengthening of the World Trade Organization as the principal body to negotiate trade-related matters. This entails working towards the early conclusion of the Doha development agenda in line with the development mandate and improving market access for exports of developing countries to developed, if you like. The G20, secondly, supported or supports development and industrialization. South Africa, as a developing country and an African country, is extremely pleased with the focused attention that was devoted to development-related matters, focused attention to practically Africa, if you like, which we think weaves a very good thread, or a tapestry, if you like, this industrialization and innovation, particularly for African countries and the least developed countries, and very much in line with our NDP, National Development Plan, and the just adopted last year in the 70th UNGA, the Sustainable Development Goals 2030. So We also focused our attention to the blueprint on innovative growth. Leaders recognized that innovation and digital economy and the fourth industrial revolution could be key to propelling global economic growth. With the adoption of the G20 blueprint on innovative growth, South Africa advocated for Africa not to be left behind in this fourth industrial revolution by ensuring that there is transfer of skills and opening up of new technologies and investment equally, as I said earlier on, in skills. I know that our statement says transfer of skills, transfer of technology. Technology innovation is like an osmosis. It doesn't come just one way. There are innovative ideas that can also come from developing countries that can also be relevant to this fourth industrialization revolution. The next issue that we also looked at was the illicit financial flows. We've been debating this a lot in South Africa, in the African Union, that we need to find a way to curbing illicit financial flows in crucial, and that this is crucial. It's a crucial goal for the development of the African continent as stipulated in the AU's Agenda 2063. In this regard, South Africa's proposal that illicit financial flows from trade mispricing be studied by a World Customs Organization was also accepted by the summit. Effectively, addressing the IFFS has potential to unlock billions of dollars that could be used for African governments for the implementation of programs to achieve sustainable development goals and other developmental programs. Same goes to the AMR that I referred to earlier on, or the antimicrobial resistance. Before the summit, South Africa prioritized antimicrobial resistance as one of the key issues that required global leadership. In this regard, the G20 recognized that the antimicrobial resistance is a health, food security, and economic threat of global magnitude. The AMR has significant implications for the achievement of health-related SDGs and for the economic growth in general. Finally, the linkage between peace, security, and development was recognized during the deliberations at the summit. In this regard, global challenges such as terrorism and mass migration also received adequate attention at the summit. Thirdly, we thought we should also take you into confidence about the fact that we would be participating in the 70th Non-Aligned Movement Summit in Venezuela. I have the honor to lead this delegation on behalf of our president and the country, which will take place from the 17th to the 18th heads of states level, under the theme Peace, Sovereignty, and Solidarity for Development. This summit of the non-alignment summit would take place, non-alignment movement would take place in Venezuela, in Margarita Island, as I said earlier on, from the 17th to the 18th of September, in the next coming days. The summit is held every 3 years, and the last summit was held in Tehran on the 30th and 31st August 2012. This year's summit will be preceded by the non-alignment movement's ministerial meeting to be held on the 15th and 16th September. During the ministerial meeting, the ministers will receive the report on activities of the movement, as well as the report of the chair of the preparatory senior officials and the foreign affairs of Iran as the outgoing chair. The NAM Committee on Palestine would also sit on the sidelines of the summit to take advantage of it. Representatives of Palestine will brief the committee members, which South Africa is part of, on the current situation in Palestine, after which members can respond to the briefing as it is custom. The committee will also consider a declaration on Palestine, which will be submitted to the Heads of States Summit for adoption. President of Venezuela will be elected by acclamation as the chairperson of the 70th Summit of the Non-Aligned Movement Summit. The outcome of the meeting will cover the decisions taken during the ministerial meetings, and on the 18th of September, the meeting will conclude with the adoption of the final Margarita Island declaration. Then we will move to the 71st session of the United Nations General Assembly. The general debate of the 71st session of the United Nations General Assembly will take place in New York from the 20th to the 26th September 2016. President Zuma is expected to attend the general debate and will be accompanied by ministers, as it is custom, including the Minister of International Relations. This year's general debate takes place in the context of growing interconnected global challenges, which will include growing instability brought about by inter alia and continued conflict, increased cases of terrorism, large-scale movement of refugees and migrants, economic stagnation, and underdevelopment. The deliberations will include UN reforms, which would, within the context of the revitalization of the UN General Assembly, improvement of work of the Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, and most importantly, the substantive reform of the UN Security Council. Of course, this debate of the UNSC and the reform thereof has been going on for some time, and we are not necessarily expecting a conclusion through the debate, through the General Assembly, but we think it will take us some way. This year will also be the final general debate under the term, or the second term, of the current Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, whose term comes to an end by end of this year. The General Assembly or member states are generally dissatisfied about how past UN Secretary Generals have been appointed. And this has gained a lot of support, this matter, from member states, as I've said earlier on. Significant number of civil societies have also joined in. In the past, there can be informal discussions, then the matter gets taken to the UN Security Council, then they discussed in a manner how they do things, and then and later on they come and announce to the General Assembly, and General Assembly votes on the decision that has already been taken by the Security Council. Now, majority of the countries and NGOs, as I said earlier on, have been advocating for more transparency, predictability, as well as greater role for the UNGA in the next process. While the process of selecting and appointing the next Secretary General would not have been completed by the time the general debate takes place, this process is likely to overshadow proceedings. Additionally, there will be several meetings on the margins of the UNGA, as it is always the case, and amongst them there will be a high-level meeting of the General Assembly on addressing large movements of refugees and migrants. The meeting is of particular importance for South Africa, as the African continent is one of the most affected, but also because as a country, we are the one that, the recipient annually. In fact, before this mass migration of people from the Middle East moving to some countries in Europe, very little was said about how many of us are expected to carry the can as far as this challenge is concerned. There'll also be a high-level commission on health, employment, and economic growth, which will be co-hosted by the co-chairs, which is the President Zuma and President Hollande of France, in their capacities as chair and as co-chairs. This high-level commission was appointed by the Secretary General, basically saying that there is a room for more economic growth, better job opportunities, if, as we look at the health sector globally, we're not just thinking about doctors and nurses. There are many auxiliary services that are needed of trained people that could help deal with the issue of unemployment that has become a global challenge, particularly, or in particular, in developing countries. The other event that will be co-hosted by the two presidents is the 5th anniversary of the Open Governance Partnership. Lastly, I thought we needed to just inform you that President Zuma has, on behalf of South Africa, on Sunday, issued or extended our country's deepest condolences to the United Republic of Tanzania following the 5.7 magnitude earthquake that struck northwest of Tanzania, close to Lake Victoria and the borders of the Uganda and Rwanda, resulting in deaths and injuries of scores of people. The South African government wishes to South African government wishes to encourage teams that have expertise in rescue and recovery in this situation. We've done this before. in Japan and in several other countries. And we will be standing ready to support and continue to support the people of Tanzania as they deal with this challenge. I thank you.